Alright, so we're going to be assembling a gate for our modular fort sets. First you're going to get everything out of the bag, and next you're going to take a blunt instrument and go ahead and pop out any of the leftover pieces from the cut. They're all fully cut. You don't have to go through and make any more cuts per se. They're just hanging on because they're wedged in there. Should pop out pretty easily. And as you do this, you might want to organize your parts into little piles. You should have a bag of small parts for the hinges and the closures on the door. Instead of dumping them into the pile of scraps, you might want to move the scraps first. Just go through and poke everything out. And go ahead and get started with the doors now. You'll see that one side of the doors is more flat than the other. That'll be the bottom. First we're going to put in our door lock holder there, the big bar that you put across between the two bars. That'll hold it. Just make sure that it is open to the top because gravity is what's holding the bar in place. We're going to move to the hinges, so to speak, afterwards. You have the spacer piece. You're going to put the long tab facing the wall end of the door, and then make sure your hook is facing the opposite direction of your latch holder there, your big wooden lock holder. So go ahead and glue in your spacer with the longer piece of the plus shape towards the wall, and then your hook is on top of it facing down. Now if you're curious about it and you want to make sure that you're putting it in the right way, feel free to do a quick dry fit and double check after watching the next couple steps here. Go ahead and get that one on as well. And then you do the opposite for the other side. Okay, now we're going to grab our interior support walls, our vertical supports, and we're going to put our holes in for our hooks to hang on for our hinges. And as you can see, so we're just double checking. Yep, that's the right way. And these have a locking piece on the opposite side that gets glued on. There's just a little more reinforcement for it to stick through into. So go ahead and put a little glue on the opposite side. And be sure to put the wider piece of that tab facing in, otherwise your wall won't be able to push all the way on. So just going to do the same thing with the other side. Alright, so we're going to start on our back support structure, our vertical support structure, and we're going to work our way across putting in walls. Now remember that the part with the hinge holders will be facing on the other side of this. So put your two outsides on, and then see the hinges are facing in and away from the back side. And now when we put on our front wall, our hinge holes will be right up against it there, so our doors will fit flush in the front. Using Loctite professional super glue. I prefer it just for the speed, and also it's a very strong bond. When you're doing large connections like this on these MDF kits, it's always better to start at one end and work your way across it. So now we're going to put on the floor of the palisades of the parapet wall. And depending on what you're doing, I usually like to try to push the piece down into the other piece to support it, if possible, at least to get it started. It's using gravity to help you. It can help with some of the more complex tight fits where you're pushing a bunch of tabs into one piece. Once you get it started, then you pick it up, squeeze it, and make all your connections on down the line. Again, starting on one side and working across as best you can. Alright, so next we're going to move on to the supports for the parapet floor. The wider tab will go into the wall, and the little one will go into the bottom of the floor. That tab sticking off the end will support the front of the palisade wall, or the parapet wall rather. We're going to go ahead and put that on now. Keep an eye on where your parts are actually going to connect with the other sections of MDF. No point in putting the glue in a bunch of places where it's not actually going to hit. So always a good idea to hold the piece up to where you're putting it together first. A lot of times, even me, I'll end up putting glue in places where they don't actually touch, just because the fit is kind of complex. Alright, so we're going to put the front trim piece on there. There's wood grain on the side that you don't want to glue down, so if you have the non-wood grain kit, either side is the same. Alright, and we have our vertical trim pieces that cover up our tabs from our up and downs on the inside. After you kind of line it up while your glue is still wet, sometimes it's best to put it flush with the ground so you can stand the thing up and just double check that it's not sticking out, so you create a rock. If you do end up with a rock or a little slight wobble, just find your high point and use a little sandpaper to sand down the high points. Okay, so now we're going to glue our trim pieces on the front of our doors that cover up our tabs from our hinges and our lock bar holder there. Just lining them up so that they cover up the unetched areas. If you have the non-wood grain version, you can just put them so they cover up the tab holes. And we'll do the same on the other one. Okay, now we have our access for our troops to get up. Instead of making stairs or some kind of interior thing, we thought these nice little ladders would do the trick. You can either put the glue on the back frame or on the ladder itself. I like to wiggle it around a little bit just to make sure I get contact, and then just clean the glue up afterwards where I don't hit. And we'll do the same on the other side. We do not put these on the ends because you need to be able to make the walls fit. Alright, and your doors will just hook into the hinges and they'll just hang on there. That way, if you'd like to remove them after the enemy forces destroy your door, unfortunately that can happen, you can take them off, and then if you want to add a fun bit like troops or spies getting into the place and unlocking it in advance, you can set the lock as an objective, something like that. Anyway, that's our modular gate kit.